Hey guys, Ponce here, and today's video we're going to be discussing my initial impressions of Kaisa, however the hell it's supposed to be pronounced, after having played her on the PvE for about 10, 11 hours or so the other day. So yeah, my first impressions, not good, as my most likely rather cynical YouTube title, which I haven't decided on yet, will indicate. I would say she's actually probably my least favorite release since probably at least around sometime in 2012. I can't even remember the last time I've actually disliked playing a champion so much. And there are a number of reasons for that. So let me preface this all by me saying this is not entirely a balance judgment, or, you know, how good she is, or, you know, whatever. It's a combination of personal preference, but also at the same time a number of core issues I feel the character has. So it's a combination of things, and people get oddly defensive about this kind of stuff. So keep in mind, everyone, it's not a value judgment. If you like this character and want to play it, I'm not saying, you know, you're Hitler reborn and, you know, you should go slit your own throat or whatever. I'm just saying this character's got problems, and it's a combination of I don't like her for a variety of reasons, but at the same time she's also got a lot of major issues, or which are just straight up issues. So first off, let's start off with basically why I don't like her, and some elements of bias as to why that's going to feed into it. So, you know, let's get that out of the way first. I don't like AD carries as a general rule of thumb. There are some I do like. Sometimes I like the old Kindred. I didn't mind Graves in any of his incarnations. Of course, they were like, you know, on standard AD carries. But anyway, it's not like an always thing. But generally speaking, I don't like AD carries. She already has that going against her for me, despite the fact that I know she plays jungle and all that kind of stuff. She can play AD carry, sort of. But you know, that's not an overriding factor. For example, I've talked about this concept before. I don't tend to like mid lane squishy mages either, but conceptually, I actually really liked Zoe and her playstyle. I actually enjoyed the actual process of playing her because I thought the kit was fun. Let's not get into Zoe balance. That's not what I'm talking about here. But I thought like the actual act of playing Zoe was quite interesting, despite the fact that it doesn't suit my personal playstyle. The problem with this character goes a lot deeper, and just the fact there are so many problems with her, and everything just seems slightly off, ends up just leading to this big mess that I really don't like. You know, it's nothing individually that's like making me say this is terrible. So it's like so all over the place and expansive that I'm not actually sure where to start in terms of, I don't know, fixing her. Well, I mean, to me, fixing her is definitely the right term, but what to do about her to make her feel like an actual complete and entertaining champion to me. So let's start off with, first off, her kit just straight up feels bad and janky, and it just doesn't, like, a lot of it just doesn't feel to work particularly well together. You know, individually, these abilities just, I mean, I guess they're okay. They're not very interesting, which is another thing we'll get into in a little bit. But basically, every ability you have just has some kind of crippling drawback that makes it very annoying to use. Taken individually, I realize, you know, there's supposed to be elements of counterplay, and, you know, the enemy can do stuff against you, etc., etc. But when everything you do has a slight drawback to it, it feels very, I don't know, to sound kind of cliche, it feels very unepic. It just kind of feels like there's these weird, seemingly arbitrary, I don't know, avenues for failure on everything you do. For example, like the Q will just target minions around you if you just happen to be slightly in range of them. Like you're standing right next to an enemy champion, but all the missiles are going to fly backwards, you know, to the like a minion or like a jungle mob or something that's just like just barely in range and like off the screen or something because, you know, your camera's moved up. The W projectile just feels really slow, not particularly interesting. So the width just doesn't feel particularly good, and it just, I mean, when it lands, I guess it, you know, the fact that it's just so terrible makes it feel better, I guess. But the fact that it's also even tied in with the ult and has this massive cooldown and all that is, and then there's also the E, which, you know, turns off your ability to auto attack while you're doing it, which, you know, in and of itself wouldn't be a terrible thing, but when you're adding all these things together, it just, everything starts to feel slightly kind of bad a lot of the time. Her ult is just straight up bad. It's like a snowball tool, essentially. Like if you're doing really well, okay, it feels kind of nice because you can chase down a squishy who's probably underfed, and then you can beat the crap out of him. You're like a bully. But, you know, if you're not doing absolutely fantastically or it's not super late game, it feels like one of the most underwhelming ults in the game. You gotta like land something, or someone else has gotta land CC for you, and then you can kind of slowly warp in. The distance is wonky and doesn't properly line up with the W at early ranks, and it's just everything's just really all over the place, which is another topic let's get into. It just kind of feels like this character is sort of designed to do a whole bunch of things theoretically, but lacks cohesion as a result. And it just sort of feels like you don't do anything particularly great. And at the same time, okay, I'm going to get into this because this is more subjective, I suppose. But it seems to be, at least from what I'm reading from people online, this is a general consensus. Again, I'm not saying everyone feels this way, but a lot of people just feel like her kit is uninspired and just boring to play. I certainly found that. I just didn't find it entertaining. Granted, again, AD carry bias for me, but at the same time, it just seems to be, I don't know, from what I've seen, and again, you know, I have no stats to back this up, but it generally seems like a lot of people agree with this general sentiment. Aside from that, man, there's so many problems. I forgot where I was in terms of the problems. I should write this down on the side somewhere. But the next issue I was having was basically the timing on her scaling also feels really bad. And again, I realize not everyone can be an early game champion, but she just feels feeble and, I don't know, terrible to play super early on. And it just kind of feels like every time you go to do something risky, you're going to end up punished for it on this character, which is especially weird given how her ult functions. So it just feels like you don't have an ult really, outside of super niche cases to use, or, you know, you get to late game, which we'll talk about in a second here. So just, I don't know, in that sense also feels like just way too team dependent to do stuff for you for most of the game. And then very late game you can start doing things, because she does scale quite well late. But in essence, I never felt like I was playing a complete or good champion until probably about like the 30-minute markish, or like until I had at least 3 completed big ticket items. And then she actually starts to kind of do stuff and kind of do things on her own, can actually take risks. Which is, I don't know, a very unentertaining way to play the game for me, and I feel like it's just bad game design if you're not really, you know, it just doesn't feel good for the first 30 minutes. Now here's a personal issue. I thought I was going to get this out of the way earlier as well, but it also kind of feeds into this general concept of, you know, not very interesting for the first while. The role, what she actually really excels at, aside from like very late game carry ability, not like super hyper crazy carry, you know, kind of ability. You know, there are things that carry harder in the game, at least in my experience thus far. Granted, only it's about 11 hours, but is the fact that she's very, very good, and she seems to specialize in neutral objective control. So this is like taking down big like jungle mobs, except the Raptor camp, because she sucks at AoE early on anyway. After later on, obviously, it doesn't matter. But she's like really good at taking down, you know, Baron, whatchamacallit, Dragon, Rift Herald, you know, stuff like that. Which, I don't know, just feels like this really uninteresting farmer role, really. You know, while the rest of your team plays in lane and actually wins the game, you're there just kind of off playing Stardew Valley, you know, collecting the, I don't know, harvesting all the corn while everyone else just murders people. And, you know, by the time you're actually useful to do anything, because this is solo queue, well, basically that's what we all play. We play solo queue. Let's be realistic. You know, we're not all playing in the LCS with teams to back us up, and, you know, everyone has their role. It's just like by the time you're actually doing anything, the team has probably already lost or won in their lanes. She's not bad at ganking. He's not terrible at it. But a lot of her ganking just seems like she's not that tier or class of jungler who kind of like makes things happen. Again, it's like she's very risk adverse early on. It's like it almost seems very dependent on your allies to do something for you and totally set things up. And then you're there to support them. That's really what it felt like most of the games I played. It was like, there'll be cool stuff happening and I'll do okay, you know, when I show up. But it's like, well, you know, I was kind of an accessory to what was happening. It was mostly the Aatrox that did the cool stuff, and I just kind of took pot shots from the side and looked, you know, mildly useful, as I didn't take too much risk and didn't die. Now that's shades of, you know, just general AD carry problems, I suppose, or my dislike of the role. But, anyway, that's those are roughly my feelings on it. Again, there were just so many small problems with the character, small to medium problems, some I would argue maybe even major, that I'm not totally sure what to do about it. I don't know if it's a case of number fixes, just making her kit feel more cohesive, giving, like, switching up her when her power spikes are, evening out when the power spikes are throughout the game more. There's just so much that could theoretically change, and of course this is the problem with balancing. You know, you start fucking with one specific element of the character, then maybe suddenly she's overpowered, or, you know, this part of the kit doesn't make sense. Which is when there's so many, you know, interplaying factors that could theoretically be changed because they're all no good. And I'm not sure what the problem is. I just feel like this character is a mess. And yeah, so let's end this on sort of this note here. Incidentally, that was stupid. I clicked on the terrain and it sent my character the wrong way. That was my fault. That's nothing to do with the character. But anyway, as another example of a character I didn't like was Orin, in terms of a recent release. Now, that was purely a case of I didn't like his gameplay. I felt it was boring. Like, that was my issue. I realized he was a good tank, and you could do stuff, and, you know, subsequently he got actually buffed a bit, I think, and then people actually started playing him quite a bit because he was just straight up strong. But my issue was, like, my only issue really was his kit was boring, and it, like, mechanically speaking, it held no interest to me, and I felt it was one of the most boring releases, if not the most boring release in recent memory. But I accepted that, okay, the character is actually pretty good, and he sort of makes sense what he does, and it's all cohesive. This character doesn't even have that. Even if theoretically, again, I don't want to get into balance too much. You know, it's only a day. It's hard to say exactly where character balance is on the PBE, because the PBE is a terrible place to test balance. Everyone's just all over the place. She seems like she can function very well in very specific contexts. It's just those contexts that I've outlined previously, I feel are very boring. Your mileage may vary, but I feel like a lot of people will agree with me in terms of just it's not particularly inspired or interesting. But it's just also the fact that, again, it's coupled with the fact that the kit is janky, and it just, a lot of the time, you just feel bad for playing this character. And I don't know, like I said, I've said so much in this video, and there's so much I dislike. It's hard to, you know, recap everything. I really should have written this down, but, you know, I kind of go off the cuff with these videos. I feel it's more genuine, but, you know, you may just call it disorganized. But anyway, those are my thoughts on this character. Could change, maybe, that, you know, she's going to be on the PBE for 2 weeks, but there's a lot of work to do. Anyway, I'm not totally done with the character. I'll probably play it a little bit more. I did give her a big chance. I played her a lot. I played her in most roles the other day. I tested out tons of builds, which is probably something I should have talked about, but I'm not going to. So yeah, I'll probably end up streaming her a little bit today, if you're interested, on twitch.tv/Ponce. But I wouldn't expect much. I'm probably just going to get fed up and stop playing after a few games, to be honest. But like I said, I'm willing to, you know, do some science. Anyway, thanks for watching. Those are my opinions. I don't know, let me know what your guys' thoughts are. Like I said, you know, if you like the character, that's your specific playstyle. I'm not going to say, you know, you're going to have no success with this character, or you're going to be a terrible human being, etc., etc. I'm just saying, I don't like her. These are the reasons. But at the same time, she's also got some very big design issues, and I feel she could be a lot better. Okay, let's end. Okay, I keep saying I'm gonna end on that note, but let's actually end on this note. That's my other issue with this character. It feels like there's a lot that theoretically could work well and be interesting, and everything is just done slightly wrong or moderately wrong, and it all just adds up. Anyway, see you guys around. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.